The letter that should never have
How
arrived.
could this be?
The palace gardens glowed under
changes
early
everything
morning
now.
sunlight, trimmed hedges forming perfect symmetry, a world where nothing was supposed to go wrong. Lady Cassandra Vale stood at the tall window of her private chamber, her reflection pale against the glass. In her hand rested a single envelope, ivory-colored, sealed with no mark. No royal crest. No sender name. Only truth, waiting to explode. For decades, Cassandra had mastered control. Public smiles. Perfect speeches. Measured compassion. She had survived scandals, criticism, and political storms. But this was different. Her fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single line written in neat, calm handwriting. I know who you really were before the world knew your name. Her breath stopped. Because only 3 people alive should have known that history. And 2 of them were gone. The third. She hadn't thought about him in 35 years. Far across the palace courtyard, Prince Adrian, second in line to the throne, walked with quiet confidence. Unlike many royals, Adrian listened more than he spoke. Staff respected him. Citizens trusted him. And he noticed things others didn't. Like the way Cassandra had barely touched breakfast. The way her smile cracked during the morning briefing. He didn't confront her. He simply watched. By afternoon, another letter arrived. This time thicker. Inside, old photographs, a hospital document, a birth record, DNA confirmation, and one final message. I am not here to destroy you. I am here because I deserve the truth. Signed only, Elena. Cassandra collapsed into her chair. Memories she had buried came flooding back. A different life, a different identity, a decision made out of fear, not cruelty. But fear has consequences, and consequences always come due. That night, Cassandra barely slept. Outside, palace lights shimmered. Inside, her past waited. And somewhere in the city, a woman who shared her blood prepared to change everything. The tea between them had gone cold. Neither woman noticed. Outside the countryside estate, wind moved gently through tall oak trees, but inside the sitting room the air felt heavy, like time itself had paused to watch them. Elena finally leaned back, studying Cassandra with eyes that held both strength and old wounds. You say you thought you were protecting me, Elena said quietly. But you never tried to find me. Not once. The words landed softly, but hit harder than shouting ever could. Cassandra swallowed. Because this question had lived inside her for decades. I wrote letters, she said slowly. Dozens of them. Every year. On your birthday. Elena's brow tightened slightly. I never sent them. Silence again. I was afraid, Cassandra continued. Afraid I would destroy the life you were building. Afraid you would hate me. Afraid I would see proof that I made the wrong choice. Elena looked down at her hands. For years, she had imagined this meeting filled with shouting, accusations, dramatic confrontations. Instead, there was something worse. Regret. Real, quiet, human regret. And that was harder to fight. Across the estate grounds, security staff stood at respectful distances. Inside the main house, Cassandra's private aide watched surveillance monitors carefully, not for threats, but for media drones. Because if even one photo leaked, the story would explode overnight. Back in the sitting room, Elena finally spoke again. My adoptive mother died 3 years ago, she said. Cassandra's eyes lifted quickly. I'm sorry, she said instinctively. Elena nodded once. She told me the truth before she passed. She said my biological mother cried when she signed the adoption papers. Cassandra's hand moved to her mouth. Because it was true. She remembered the clinic room. The white walls. The smell of disinfectant. The nurse who wouldn't meet her eyes. And the sound of a newborn cry fading down the hallway. I asked her why you never came back, Elena continued. She said sometimes adults make choices they can never undo, so they spend their lives trying to survive them. Cassandra closed her eyes. Because that was exactly what she had done. Hours passed without either of them realizing. They spoke about small things next. Elena's career in investigative journalism. Her love of photography. Her habit of waking before sunrise. Each tiny detail felt like discovering chapters from a book Cassandra never got to read. And slowly, the sharp edge of anger softened into something more complicated. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. Then Elena asked the question Cassandra feared most. Does anyone else know? Cassandra hesitated. My sister knew, she said. And your biological father. Elena's expression shifted. Is he alive? Cassandra nodded slowly. Yes. Elena absorbed that silently. Does he know about me now? Yes, Cassandra said. I told him after I received your letter. Elena looked toward the window. Did he want to find me? Cassandra gave a small, sad smile. He never stopped. That was the moment Elena's emotional armor cracked the most. Not tears, but a long exhale, like she had been holding her breath since childhood. Later that evening, as sunset painted the sky gold and deep orange, they stepped outside onto the estate terrace. For the first time they stood side by side, not across from each other. Not opponents. Not strangers. Just two people connected by history neither could change. Unknown to them. Prince Adrian had already intercepted palace intelligence reports about unusual communications tied to Cassandra's private schedule. Not because he was suspicious, because he was protective. And when he quietly uncovered the truth, he didn't feel anger. He felt relief. Because secrets were poison inside institutions built on image. And truth, even painful truth, was survival. That same night, Adrian made a decision. He would not expose Cassandra. He would help her control the narrative. Not to hide truth, but to deliver it with dignity. Back at the estate, Cassandra turned to Elena. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I don't expect a relationship. Elena looked at her carefully. But I hope, someday, you might allow me to know you. Elena considered that for a long moment. Then finally said, I didn't come here to destroy you. Cassandra nodded slowly. I came, Elena continued, because I didn't want to live the rest of my life wondering if I mattered. Cassandra's voice broke. You always mattered. Night fell around them. And for the first time in 35 years, neither of them felt completely alone. But neither of them yet understood that the biggest storm wasn't media. It wasn't public reaction. It wasn't the palace advisors. It was history itself. And history was about to test all of them. When truth refused to stay hidden. Morning broke gray and quiet over the capital. Inside the palace, staff moved with unusual tension, whispers replacing normal routine chatter. Something had shifted. No one could explain why, but everyone felt it. Secrets, even hidden ones, changed the air around them.
Yes,
and Cassandra could feel it most of all. She stood in her private study, staring at the speech draft in front of her. 10 pages. 10 carefully written pages designed by palace advisors to say everything and nothing. Words like personal history. Words like difficult time in youth. Words like private family matter. No mention of Elena. No acknowledgement. No ownership. Just survival. Cassandra closed the folder slowly. For decades, survival had been enough. But not anymore. Not after looking into Elena's eyes. Not after hearing the quiet pain in her voice. Across the palace, Prince Adrian sat in the strategy room with senior advisors. The mood was tense. If this story leaks uncontrolled, one advisor said, we face public outrage, international headlines, political pressure. Adrian raised a hand. And if we hide it? The room fell silent. Another advisor cleared his throat. Then we maintain stability. Adrian leaned forward. Or we prove that we're still an institution built on image, not truth. No one answered. Because deep down, they knew he was right. That afternoon, Adrian requested a private audience with Cassandra. She expected judgment. Instead, he surprised her. I know, he said simply. Cassandra froze. How long? Long enough, Adrian said gently, to know this isn't a scandal. It's a human story.
What I'd do without
Her shoulders dropped slightly,
I'm always
relief
here for
mixing
you, my
with
dear.
fear.
Thank you.
What should I do? She asked quietly. Adrian didn't hesitate. Tell the truth, he said, before someone else tells it for you. Across the city, Elena sat in her apartment overlooking the river. Her phone buzzed constantly. Unknown numbers. Journalist emails. Social media rumors. Someone knew something. The story was starting to move. And once stories move, they don't stop. That evening, Cassandra made the decision that would change everything. She rewrote the speech. Alone. No advisors. No legal team. No public relations filters. Just truth. 3 days later, the National Community Unity Ceremony began. Thousands gathered. Millions watched live. Cameras flashed as royal family members took their places. Adrian stood beside Cassandra. Not as protector. As silent support. When Cassandra stepped to the podium, the crowd quieted. She began with the prepared speech. Charity achievements. National unity. Future initiatives. Then she stopped. Looked up. Folded the speech pages. Set them aside. I need to speak to you, she said. Not as a public figure. But as a person. The crowd shifted slightly. Advisors backstage froze. When I was young, Cassandra continued, I made a decision based on fear, not cruelty, not selfishness. Fear. The entire hall was silent now. I gave birth to a child, and I allowed her to be raised by another family. Gasps rippled through the audience. For many years I told myself it was for her future. But the truth is, her voice trembled. I never stopped wondering who she became. Millions watching worldwide leaned closer to screens. Because this wasn't royal protocol. This was real. Recently, Cassandra said, she found me. The silence became electric. She didn't come for money. She didn't come for titles. She came because every person deserves to know where they come from. Cassandra looked toward the front rows, where Elena sat, hidden among invited guests. And I am proud, Cassandra said softly, to say she is stronger, braver, and more honest than I was at her age. Tears filled many eyes across the hall. Backstage, advisors realized something shocking. Public reaction wasn't anger. It was empathy. Because everyone understood regret. Everyone understood second chances. Then something unexpected happened. Adrian stepped forward beside her. Not planned. Not scripted. He placed a supportive hand lightly on her shoulder. A silent statement. Truth is not weakness. Later that night, global headlines exploded.
We gather here today to
but not the
remember
way
and
advisors
unite.
feared. Instead
In
of
unity,
scandal
we find our
language,
greatest strength.
words like courage, honesty, healing, humanity. In her apartment, Elena watched the replay in silence. Not smiling. Not crying. Just breathing easier. For the first time in her life. She wasn't a secret. Inside the palace, Cassandra sat alone in her chamber later that night. Exhausted. Relieved. Terrified of what came next. But lighter. Because secrets are heavier than consequences. Across the palace gardens, Adrian walked alone under moonlight. For the first time since childhood, he felt hopeful about the institution he was born into. Because power without truth is fragile. But power with truth endures. But the story wasn't over. Because public acceptance was only the first step. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, takes time. And the next test would be far more personal. The day the world held its breath. The days following Cassandra's speech felt surreal. Not quiet. Not chaotic. Something stranger. The world was watching. Not with anger. Not with celebration. With curiosity. Because truth, once spoken publicly, changes how people see everything that comes after. Inside the palace, the atmosphere had shifted. Some staff moved more gently around Cassandra, like she had become more human overnight. Others avoided eye contact, unsure how to act around someone who had stepped outside the usual invisible rules of power. But the biggest shift came from the public. Messages flooded palace offices. Stories from adoptees. Letters from parents who made impossible choices. Messages of forgiveness from strangers who understood regret. For the first time in years, Cassandra didn't feel like a symbol. She felt like a person. Across the city, Elena walked along the river early one morning. No cameras followed. No reporters shouted questions. The world knew her name now. But something unexpected had happened. Instead of being the hidden child, she was becoming something else. A voice. Meanwhile, inside palace leadership meetings, tension remained. Not about scandal anymore. About precedent. If one royal figure told full truth publicly, what would people expect next? Transparency changes systems. And systems fear change. Prince Adrian noticed it immediately. The subtle resistance. The quiet pushback. The polite suggestions to return to tradition. But Adrian had seen something during that speech. Something rare. Trust being rebuilt in real time. And he wasn't willing to lose that. Then came the announcement. National Unity Celebration. Palace balcony appearance. The first major public appearance since Cassandra's confession. Global media prepared. Social media buzzed non-stop. One question dominated everything. Would Elena appear publicly with the royal family? Inside Cassandra's private sitting room, Elena sat across from her. Tea untouched again. History repeating itself in small ways. I don't want to be used as a symbol, Elena said honestly. You won't be, Cassandra replied. I don't want to stand somewhere pretending everything is fixed. Cassandra nodded slowly. It isn't fixed, she said. It's just honest now. Elena studied her. Looking for manipulation. Looking for performance. She found neither. Only nervous hope. Later that afternoon, Adrian joined them. Not as mediator. As bridge. You don't owe anyone a public moment, he told Elena. But if you choose it, he paused. It will help more people than you'll ever meet. Elena didn't answer right away, because she had spent her entire life being defined by other people's decisions. Would be her first decision that shaped history. The day arrived. Crowds filled streets. Flags waved. Camera drones hovered legally in designated zones. Energy buzzed like electricity in the air. Inside the palace, Cassandra stood near the balcony doors, heart pounding harder than during her wedding. Because weddings are scripted. Truth is not. Footsteps approached behind her. Elena, wearing a simple cream coat. Elegant, but not royal-styled. Herself. You don't have to stand next to me, Cassandra whispered. Elena surprised her. I know. Outside, the announcer's voice echoed across the courtyard. The royal household. Applause thundered. Family members stepped forward. Then Cassandra stepped out. Crowd cheers mixed with whispers. Then, pause. A shift in movement behind her. Elena stepped onto the balcony. For half a second, the entire crowd went silent. Then gasps. Then thousands of phones lifted. History, captured in real time. Cassandra didn't grab her hand dramatically. Didn't perform. She simply stood beside her. Equal height. Equal presence. And then something completely unexpected happened. Prince Adrian stepped forward. Looked out at the massive crowd. Then laughed softly. Warmly. Relieved. Not mocking. Not dismissive. Just human. Like a pressure valve releasing after decades of unspoken tension. The crowd responded with something no one predicted. Not chaos. Not outrage. Applause. Growing. Rolling. Echoing across the palace courtyard. Inside news studios worldwide, commentators struggled to describe the moment. Because it didn't fit normal narratives. It wasn't scandal. It wasn't PR recovery. It was something simpler. People seeing powerful figures act human. On the balcony, Elena leaned slightly closer to Cassandra. Not touching. But not distant anymore. A silent message. We're here. Not perfect, but here. Later that night, the video broke global viewing records. Clips of Adrian's relieved laugh spread everywhere. People called it the moment the palace finally exhaled. Inside her room that evening, Cassandra sat alone. Not scared anymore. Just tired. And strangely peaceful. Across the city, Elena stood on her apartment balcony watching lights reflect on the river. For the first time in her life. Her story wasn't something hidden. It was something shared. And inside the palace gardens, Adrian walked under evening lights. Knowing something historic had happened. Not politically. Not socially. Humanly. But the real work was still ahead. Because truth opens doors. But walking through them. That takes courage every day. The legacy truth leaves behind. The weeks after the balcony appearance changed everything. Not overnight. Not magically. But steadily. Like sunrise replacing darkness. Slow but unstoppable. Inside the palace, daily life resumed. Meetings. Ceremonies. Diplomatic visits. But something invisible had shifted. People spoke more honestly in private meetings. Staff felt less like they were protecting an image, and more like they were supporting people. Truth had not weakened the palace. It had humanized it. For Cassandra, the adjustment was harder. Not because of public pressure, but because of personal reality. For decades, she had lived with one version of her life. Now she had to learn how to live with the full version. And that meant learning something she had never fully allowed herself before. How to be vulnerable without fear. One afternoon, she met Elena at a small private garden on palace grounds. No cameras. No staff nearby. Just two chairs under an old oak tree. They spoke about simple things. Childhood memories Elena wished she had. Mistakes Cassandra wished she could change. But slowly, they began building something new. Not mother and child from the past. But two adults choosing connection in the present. Meanwhile, Elena's life had changed dramatically. Her inbox filled daily with messages from adopted adults. From parents who had made painful choices. From young people searching for identity. Instead of stepping away from the spotlight, she stepped into purpose. Within months, Elena launched an international foundation, the Origins Project, a global support network for adopted individuals searching for biological history and emotional closure. Not focused on blame, focused on understanding, focused on healing. Privately, Cassandra funded half of it, but never publicly attached her name, because this wasn't about repairing reputation. It was about repairing reality. Prince Adrian
Hear the
became the
global
quiet
voices
architect of
and our
internal
message is
palace
clear.
reform.
Together,
More
we will
open
shape the
communication,
future and make our
more
voices heard.
transparency in public messaging, less performance, more honesty. Older advisors resisted at first, but public trust metrics told the story. Approval ratings rose. Not because people believed the palace was perfect, but because people believed it was trying to be honest. 6 months later, during a global humanitarian summit, Elena delivered her first major public speech. Not as the hidden daughter, not as scandal history, but as herself. I used to think identity was something you were given, she told the audience. Now I know identity is something you build, from truth, not perfection. Standing backstage, Cassandra cried quietly. Not from guilt, from pride. That night, Cassandra wrote Elena a letter. Not formal, not polished, just handwritten, like the one she never sent decades ago. This time, she delivered it herself. Seasons changed. Winter turned to spring. And with it, something inside both women softened. One evening, they walked together through the palace gardens at sunset. The same gardens where Cassandra once walked alone carrying the weight of her secret. Now she walked beside the living proof that secrets don't disappear. They transform. You can't rewrite the past, Elena said quietly. Cassandra nodded. No, she said. But you can decide what the past means. Across the courtyard, Adrian watched from a distance.
It's so
not
lovely
intruding,
to be here with
just
you.
observing.
I love these
Because
walks. They
leadership
mean
he
so
had learned
much.
wasn't about controlling history. It was about helping people survive it. Years later, history books would write about that era differently. Not as the time the palace faced scandal, but as the time it faced truth. The instant karma everyone expected never came in the form of punishment. It came as something more powerful. Accountability, growth, healing. Because real justice isn't about destroying people. It's about transforming them. In her final public address years later, Cassandra said something historians would quote forever. Power built on perfection will always crack. Power built on truth can survive anything. In the front row, Elena smiled. Not as someone who had been hidden, but as someone who had been found. And outside, the crowd applauded. Not for royalty, not for image, but for something far more rare. Honesty. Glowing star final moral message. Truth does not erase mistakes, but it can transform what comes after. Respect is not earned by hiding flaws. It is earned by owning them. And sometimes, the greatest victory is not proving you were right. It's proving you were brave enough to be honest. White Medium Star story complete.